Hello, I hope that you are ready to find your fire. I'm going to teach you some stories, tips, and strategies today that will allow you to lead to inspire for change. Let's get started. So, I'm Terri Broussard Williams. For the past 20 years, I've been in television news, I've been a nonprofit executive, and I've been a lobbyist. At each of these stops, I've had one thing that's been the thread that gives me my own fire, and that's I've been able to share data with people that allows them to make their community a better place. I truly believe if you give people information, they're going to take it and use it for social good. So I hope that that's exactly what you do with this information that you'll get today. So, I want to share with you a picture of my family. On the left are my grandparents, who are from Lafayette, Louisiana. They are my mother's parents. And on the right are my grandparents, who are from New Iberia, Louisiana. They are my father's parents. My grandmother, with the roses on her shirt, she's the only one that's still alive. She's 93 years old. And before the pandemic, she worked every single election day to register people to vote, or on election day, she actually checked their driver's license to make sure that they were allowed to vote in that particular district. But beyond that, each of these are fire starters. Fire starters are people that see something that others ignore and they take action. My grandparents saw people all the time walking the streets of Truman, Louisiana. They didn't have cars, they were walking 5 and 6 miles to go to church. My grandparents had a car, but they thought, what would happen if we would build a church closer to the neighborhood of Truman? So they did. They went from being a caretaker of families, a janitor, a cafeteria school manager, to being church builders. And they built a church that you see there on the left, the red brick building called Our Lady Queen of Peace. About 10 years ago, the church burned down. It burned all the way down and it had to be rebuilt. The church you see on the right is Our Lady Queen of Peace today. It was built in part by my parents who raised their hand. They said, if not us, then who? They became the next generation of church builders. My father oversaw the capital campaign, making sure that both they had money to build the church and the operations were on point. My mother kept track of everything else, hours and hours of meetings they spent. And what I love about this church is that the donors were diverse. The church at the time had a white priest, and the congregation was mostly African American. Yet dollars came in from all across the country and all across Louisiana to fuel the fire of the people that were leading the movement and to allow them to build a bigger church. Now, 3 months after those church doors opened, we buried my father in that church. And it was beautiful, although it was a sad occasion for us. So many people that were a part of that movement were there the day of his funeral. And it was then that I realized the movements that we built as leaders who turn moments into movements aren't always for the people that we know. They're not always for the people that we will see. Many times they are for people that we will never meet. And so that's why I'm excited to talk to you today. This is a picture of me in Washington, D.C. DC is a spot where we have a lot of change. Laws are made there. A lot of people go to take part in building movements. On this particular day, I was lobbying some members of Congress and members of the president's administration and the city council member. And all of a sudden, I see a man pick up a sofa and throw it in the air. See, he thought his cell phone was underneath it. And so he thought if he put the sofa there, he could grab his phone and go about his merry way. But the sofa fell on my head. Yes, a sofa, as in a couch or a piece of furniture, fell on my head. Now, I'm not very tall, I'm 5'2", but I did not realize that a man could pick up a sofa, and that I really was that short until that very moment. But so much more happened to me than just having a concussion, which I did have. See, my life was moving so fast. It was like I was driving a race car. I was going from one meeting to another, volunteering, calling home to check on my family, checking on my friends, was taking care of everyone else, but not taking care of myself. So that very moment, I was placed on a sofa, or as I say, I like to look for iron benches these days because they don't move. But I was placed in the center of that couch for 3 months because I couldn't work. And so my life became centered. I realized a couple of things that I hadn't learned before. And they're all things that we should take along the way, no matter how old we are, no matter if we are 10, 20, 30, or 40. These are all things that will allow us to find our fire and to keep it going day in and day out. So I love this quote so much. It's Ella Baker. She says, "Give light and people will find a way." And that's why you're here today. You want to be a part of something bigger than yourself. You want to be a part of a movement. So when you find that light and you share it with others, people will follow your movement because they're looking for a way. But I mentioned before there were three things that I learned when I was sitting on those couches. The first is rest. If you're going to be a leader that's going to turn a moment into a movement, no matter your age, you want to rest up. You want to make sure that you're healthy, happy, and whole. You also want to just take some time to be still. That's where your mindfulness comes in. Curate some mindful moment or journal so that you can express yourself and maintain your mental health at all times. You also want to find grace and share grace with others. Forgive those who might miss a deadline, or forgive yourself if you choose to skip a meeting or not fulfill an obligation. Sometimes we just need grace to get through the day. So, those are some things that you should pack in your bag as you begin on your journey to be a leader that turns a moment into a movement. I'm going to take you back to Washington, D.C. On the left, you see Martin Luther King Jr. He was a man that had a dream. In August of 1963, he stood right there at the March on Washington and told people about that dream. They were fighting for equality in the workplace, a very movement that still exists today. On the right, you see high school students that were marching, and they said, "Enough is enough. If all our president and our family can do is send thoughts and prayers, we're going to take matters into our own hands." So these high school students, who could have been grieving because they lost their friends, instead they launched March for Our Lives, a movement that sets out to defeat gun violence. And they started that very movement that now has 300 college chapters and high school chapters across the country. The movements that you start, sometimes they're not for the people that you know, sometimes they're for the people that you'll never know. So I'm going to teach you the fire starter formula today. It's going to help you be that leader that turns a moment into a movement. So grab your worksheet. So you're going to have 4 blocks on this worksheet. We're going to walk through each of the 4 pieces of it that are tied to the fire starter formula. So I'm going to give you time to work on the worksheet as we go along this journey. But first off, I want to teach you about cause. Cause is your why. It's the reason why you have joined this organization, the reason why you volunteer, or why you want to start a movement. Or if you're working on a goal for yourself for some personal development, why you're setting out to achieve that goal. So you want to take a moment and write down your cause here. I'm going to play a little music for you while you write down your cause. All right. Welcome back. Let's talk about the collective. The collective are the people that you bring to sit at the table with you and map out your journey to build a movement. They're the people who are going to serve on boards, the people that might be a part of your organization, the people who are part of the community. They might even be some of the beneficiaries or the people who will be on the other end of the goods or services you provide as a nonprofit. They're all part of that collective, an advisory board of people that will hold you accountable along the way. You want to make sure that that table where they sit is very long and wide. So what that means is you want that table to be diverse, equitable, and inclusive. You really want it to reflect the organization you're serving as well as the community that you're serving. A lot of times we forget that second piece. I'm going to pause again to give you some time to write all about your collective. Welcome back. This is the third step of the fire starter formula. It's all about communicating. This is where you're going to think about data and stories. So, what are some data points or some examples of the things that you want to change in your community? And what is the story that you're going to tell? For a very long time, I was a lobbyist that worked on smoke free laws. So I would educate people about the toll of tobacco in their communities. And oftentimes I would say, you know, 1 out of 4 youth would start smoking today and they would smoke until they were 18. Those are the types of data that I'm referring to. And then you often couple it with stories. So I might say something like, big tobacco companies are targeting youth. They want them to start smoking flavored tobacco because once they get hooked, they never stop. So think about those types of data and stories that you can use to bring your movement to life and to communicate with others. When you communicate with others, they're going to learn about your movement. They are going to hear about it and connect with it both in their head and their heart. And this is what encourages them to start your movement, to either join as a follower, to support it by maybe making a donation, or to amplify it by maybe posting on Facebook or some other type of social media. So we're going to pause again so that you can write down some of the stories and the data that you need to get your movement moving. Now, the last block is change. We're going to talk about change. This is where you get your hands dirty and you really do the work to create the change that you want to see in the world. This is where you get to shine as a leader that turns a moment into a movement. So you'll think about the tactics or the steps that you'll take to begin your movement. So we're going to pause again just for you to write down some ideas or have a little we're going to pause for you to write down some ideas and for you to have a little light brainstorm about the steps that you want to take to get your movement moving. All right, you're now ready to do the work. You're going to use the other side of your worksheet and we're going to fill it out. The first thing is, if you don't have a worksheet, you can draw a circle or you can just grab your worksheet and you're going to fill in a circle. We're going to use a model called WOOP. The first step in WOOP is will. So inside of here, this is where you will it. You think about the wish you have for your movement, the possibility, or dream really big. I want you to write down, what is it that you see? What is it that you want to will? What is it that you want to happen as a volunteer in your community? It could be a service project that you might do with your mother. It could be a service project you do alone or one that you do within the community. So take a moment and write down your will. And as I mentioned before, you can also use this for personal development. So if you're wanting to crush a goal, like maybe losing weight or reading 10 books a year, or even thinking about how to save money, you can still put it in this goal category. This would be where you list your goal, the big thing that you want to achieve. The O stands for opportunity. You're going to fill out the opportunity there. Think about the outcome that you want to have. It should be measurable. You also want to make it tangible so you can begin to make it real. When we think about goals and we move from just ideas to taking action or seeing it as something that becomes real, we're more likely to achieve them. And the same is true for our movement or our personal development opportunity. So we're going to pause right here so you can write down the opportunities that you have to create change. Welcome back. We are almost done. Here, you're going to think about the obstacle, the things that feel really hard, the things that feel like you can't do them. And then you're also going to think about dream killers. What would just make you so sad if it didn't happen as a volunteer or a movement maker? You want to write it down because if you can identify it and see it and talk about it, then you're starting to build a group of people around you that not only will hold you accountable, but they're going to help you achieve it. They're going to cheer you on if they see you at that very spot. You also want to think about deal breakers. Those are the things that would force you to quit if a movement wasn't in alignment with your core values or the things you believed with both your head and your heart. So I want to give you a moment to write down those obstacles so that you have them there and you can begin to see how you can overcome these hurdles anytime. The last step stands for P, our purpose. And so here we're going to focus on your purpose. There are 4 lines. I want you to think of 4 things that you can do to get that movement moving. Write them down. When you have a plan, you're more likely to take a first step. You're more likely to bring it on. So I want to give you time to really think about what you can do to bring your movement to life. And whoop, there it is. That is how you begin to build a movement. You can use this if you're thinking about a new fundraiser, a new community service activity, or even a new law that you want to pass. The possibilities are limitless. Again, you can also use this if you're thinking about how you want to save money, lose weight, or achieve any goal in life. The fire starter formula is something that will be beneficial to you. So I want to show you exactly how you can use the fire starter formula as you move forward. And I want to connect some of the dots for you. So cause, again, it's tied to your will. When you remember why you started and you begin with why, you're more likely to stick with it. For those of you that are in an organization and maybe you're a leader, this is going to help you recruit your members. It's going to help you, share that passion that you have and allow people to see it. Collective, those are the people we're bringing to the table, the people that are going to be part of the movement, the people that are helping us build the movement. They're going to work on opportunities. They're going to work on putting those plans into action and helping you think big. If you're a community leader, this is how you're going to retain people because they're going to see the opportunities and find their purpose, and they're going to begin to get their hands dirty. And when they do that, they're more likely to stay a member. Communicate. That's where we talked about having the data and stories to inspire. And when you use the communication tools that you have to inspire, a lot of times it allows you to overcome hurdles and obstacles because people have stories to inspire them, but they also have data to believe that they must think of a way to help the beneficiaries that they're serving. You'll also begin to use the data and the stories that you have to communicate any obstacles you have with others, to share about why something is so important that it must happen. And that's when people will come and truly become followers and will allow you to get that movement moving. If you're a community leader, it's going to allow you to retain your members. When members can help you solve problems, those go from being a solution, SOLIT, those are going to go from being a solution, SOL, to a solution. I heard that from someone this week, SOUL. And when people begin to really find that passion and use it, you will find a way to overcome any hurdle that comes your way. Last, we talked about change. That's really getting your hands dirty and doing the work. Again, people will return to their purpose and their why, and they will be so inspired to help you move any needle, any obstacle, and any movement. And when members find their purpose, for you, if you're a community leader, it's going to help you retain them because they're going to remember the reason why they're there and they're going to want to do it for the greater good of those they serve. Four things that I love to take in my backpack, if you will, when I'm working on a movement are faith, fortitude, the ability to fail forward, and forgiveness. Faith is knowing that there's something much bigger than you. You know, I talked about churches, but truly it's about the universe and providing the things that it's need. Oh, start over. Faith is about believing in something much bigger than you. I talked earlier about church. It's not really about religion, but it's about being part of an ecosystem that is putting into the world all around us so that when we leave it, it's better than when we found it. Fortitude, that's just knowing there's always a way. Even on the darkest and hardest days, dawn will always come. And when we have fortitude and we believe in that, we can just crush any obstacle that comes our way, and we will always have energy to find our fire. Failing forward, so important. A lot of times we don't want to talk about failure. We want everything to be perfect. And that really should not happen. We should have what I call fail fest. When we fail and we make something better because we think about it differently, we should celebrate. You know, a lot of times when you fail and you fail forward, you hit a spot where you're generative, a spot where you're thinking about making things better and you're using the collective and communicating with them to help you do that. And so then it truly becomes something better and it becomes something that's beneficial for all. So don't be afraid to fail. Lastly, forgiveness. We have to forgive each other if we make mistakes in movement building. We have to forgive the movement if sometimes it's not there for us when we need it. But most importantly, we have to forgive ourselves if we just can't make it to another meeting or we need to sleep in a little bit on a Saturday morning. Forgiveness is so important. It's what allows us to continue to find our fire. Speaking of find your fire, I teach all of these things and more. I also share stories from change makers who are doing social good in the world. In my first book, which is a Amazon new release called Find Your Fire. So I hope that you pick one up. And there are also worksheets in the back that will allow you to work on movement building. I'd love to stay in touch with you. You can follow me at all things at Terri B. Williams or Movement Maker Collective. And feel free to send a tweet or follow us on Instagram and let us know how your movement is going. We want to cheer you on. You are a leader that turns a moment into a movement. And it takes a world of movement makers and fire starters like us to keep it going. So definitely let us know. And always visit terrybwilliams.com for stories, strategies, and tools on how you can be a fire starter and keep movements moving. Thank you so much for watching this today, and I hope to see you on the other side of your successful movement.